tell us about that?
Yeah, so I really just wanted to be around my cousin Elias. Um, and I wanted to get away from Annie, but I wasn't allowed to call anybody. So I didn't. I obeyed until my cousin Elias called me a couple days later and he's like, "Hey, I heard you're still here. Why aren't you coming over?" And I was like, "Well, and I here I am again in with a conundrum. I can't tell him that my aunt is trying to out me. So what do I tell this person to to convince him that I'm not staying at my aunt's house because I want to be here. It's the last place I want to be on earth. I want to be at his house with his mom and him. So I just said, Annie just thinks it's best that I stay here. And he could tell. He could tell by my responses something was not right. He's like, "Todd, why are you acting this way? Why are you being weird? Why aren't you coming over?" I'm like, I finally just said, I would love to come over, but I don't think I'm allowed. I don't think your mom wants me there. What? What are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think anybody, I think they all want me to stay here by Annie. Meanwhile, inside, I'm like, please invite me over. Come get me. Talk to your mom. Come get me. Well, that's what happened. My Aunt Sammy got on the phone and she goes, "What do you mean we don't want you here? Elias is telling me we don't want you here." I said, "Well, I don't know. Where did you hear that from?" I don't want to say Annie because who knows what she's going to do to me when she gets home and my aunt calls her to tell her the conversation I had with her. So they all came to the conclusion, clearly my Aunt Annie was trying to stop me from seeing them. So my Aunt Samia goes, "Okay, I'm coming to get you. You're coming over." Okay. So I go to my Aunt Samia's house and my Aunt Samia calls Annie only after I get there and says, "Listen, Tavo's here. He's fine. He wants to stay the night. And we're good with it. We're happy to have him. No, he needs to be at my house. His mom told him he needs to be at my house." I'm like, no, my mom never said that. I don't need to be there. And my Aunt Samia is realizing something is wrong. She's like, "Listen, Annie, we don't want drama. We have family here." When she said we don't want drama, that told me that my Aunt Teresa called my Aunt Samia and told her something was wrong. So she said, "Listen, he's going to stay here. It's fine. But don't come over. We just don't want drama. It's fine. We just let him spend time with the kids. You don't need to be around him. He spent enough time with you." They hung up. Fast forward an hour. The doorbell rings. Who is it? Annie. So when I got to my cousin's house, him and I and my other cousin, Christina, his younger sister, went into his room. And he was just trying to talk to me like, "Tav, why are you're different. You're quieter. You're scared. Why are you staying at Annie's house? Why don't you want to be here? Who told you can't be here? Something is not right. Something is not right." And we heard the doorbell ring and it was Annie. And my Aunt Samia was like, "Annie, I told you not to come here. We don't want trouble. We have company. We don't want drama. Why did you come here?" When I heard that it was Annie, my heart sank. I was so scared. And I told my cousin, I was like, "Don't let me go. Don't let me be with her. Please don't let me be alone with her. Don't let me be alone with her. I don't want to tell you why. Please don't let me be alone with her. Please don't let me." I just kept begging. And it was as if he was like a knight in shining armor. And he was only 13 years old. He stood up and he was like, "I'm not going to let her go anywhere near you. You're scared of her. And I'm going to protect you. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to protect you. I'm not going to let her in here." And so I felt empowered. Oh my gosh, now one of my cousins is going to protect me, and he's a guy and he's stronger. Long story short, Annie comes in, my Aunt Samia lets her in, and the first thing she does, she comes straight up the stairs, barreling. You can hear her barreling straight up the stairs, busts into our room and looks at us and she goes, "Everybody get out except for Tavo." And my cousin Elias goes, "This is my bedroom. You get out. We're not leaving." So she looked at my niece, Christina. Annie looked at my niece, Christina. She goes, "Get the hell out now. I'm not going to say it again." So my Christina huffs and puffs. She's like, "Okay, fine." Because Christina was 9 at the time. Christina leaves and Elias stands in between Annie and I. And he goes, "I'm not leaving this room. I don't know what you did to this kid, but he is scared to be alone with you, and I'm not leaving this room. Well, Annie physically grabbed him, and kicked him out of the room and shut the door. I just get stiff. Now I'm alone in this room with this woman that I didn't want to be in, and I defied her rules, and I left the house without telling her. So I'm worried what she's going to do. Well, she grabs me and she's like, I don't know why you're lying to everybody. And she starts to push me into the closet. And I'm like, whoa, no. I freaked out. I had a breakdown and I started screaming. It felt so good, Dan. I started screaming at the top of my lungs. I was like, I think I was even swearing, which I never did. I effing hate you. I never want to be around you. I am done being your sex toy. I wanted everybody in that house. I wanted the neighbors to hear me say that this woman was using me as her sex toy. I was like, I'm not your sex doll. I am not your sex toy. I never want to be alone with you again. And I ran. I broke the door and I ran out of that room. And I ran down the stairs. And as I was running down the stairs, my Aunt Sammy was running up the stairs because she's hearing me screaming. What's going on? What's going on? Annie, what are you doing up here? I told you not to come over. I told you not to come up to this room. Why are you doing? Oh, fuck him. I don't know what the hell is wrong with him. He's a liar. He just needs to go home. He keeps spreading all these rumors. I'm still screaming. I'm running around the house screaming, I am not going to be your sex toy. I'm not going to be your sex toy. Well, I finally went downstairs because it was a 3-story house. They had a big house. It had to be like 6,000 or 7,000 square feet. I run downstairs to where everybody's at. So I go down 2 flights of stairs. And I just wanted to be where everybody else was. And so I'm down there and I'm hyperventilating. And I remember my face being like numb from just not being able to control my breathing from my nose and my mouth. And my grandmother, come here, Tavo, come here. Calm down, quiet down, come here. And my grandmother was a very heavy set woman. And she pulls me close and she kind of like whispers in my ear and she goes, you've disrespected your uncle in his home and you need to go apologize to him.
Oh my gosh.
My grandmother was going to comfort me and hold me and protect me.
She didn't.
Instead, he sends me to go apologize to my uncle, who, mind you, I have seen get very physical with all of his kids. And I mean kicking, punching, throwing, breaking glass tables with his children's head, like this kind of physical. And now I just got done disrespecting him in his home, and I have to go apologize to him for standing up for myself for the first time. And so I start walking over to him, and he was sitting in the corner by the table, and no sooner did I get to him, he grabbed me the same way my grandmother did, but he probably bruised my arms with how hard he was holding me, and he pulled me really close, and he got up in my ear, and he said, if you ever embarrass me in my house again, I will kill you with my bare hands.
Wow. So
I started crying harder, and I went and I sat in the corner. I didn't want to leave the room. I didn't want to be somewhere where people weren't, where she could get to me, where Annie could get to me. I just sat in the corner and I cried. The kids weren't allowed to come back inside. Annie left. And nobody did anything. Nobody did anything. It's as if I wasn't there. And that night, guess where I ended back up? Back at Annie's house. So once again, Dan, I was taught, don't speak up. Nobody's going to help you.
I'm so sorry, Travit, you had to go through this. And I know how courageous you are talking about it. And I just thank you for the courage to do this, because many of our listeners are going to be hearing about this. Some of them may be in similar situations. Maybe there will be others who have been sexually abused. And I think your story will be powerful then. Let's go on forward and talk about, you did eventually have a child. And I know this is hard to talk about, but I would like to have you share that with our audience of what happened.
Yeah. So fast forward to when I was about 16, and my father and I didn't have the greatest relationship because he never said it, because we never spoke. I love my dad. We just weren't a communicative family. But I knew subconsciously and consciously that my father wasn't happy with the fact that I was feminine and most likely gay.
So you didn't get any help from him either? You didn't get any help from him either because he was distanced from you. But was he aware what was going on with you, or unaware?
I don't know if they were aware about anything that happened with Annie, because we never spoke. I never spoke about it. And I don't know if they were aware of the fact that I was gay, because I hid it. I think the only time they may have suspected was from the age of like 13 to 15. I had a best friend who was gay and very feminine and obvious. And he was very kind of boisterous about it. Like, he didn't care who knew. So that also kind of attracted me. Like, wow, I love that he's just standing in his own 2 feet without any fear. So I think that was probably the only, and he was my best friend. We hung out probably every day. And so that's probably the only thing that, other than how I acted, that was probably the only thing that gave away the fact that I may have been gay. But it was clear and apparent to me that my father especially knew, and it just wasn't, we didn't get along. He
wasn't accepting you. He was just not accepting you for who you were.
No, and we didn't have the greatest relationship already, not only just because of our lack of communication, but also my father and my mother had a very tumultuous marriage, and they would split once a year, almost every summer is what it felt like, from the age of 7 until I was well into my teens, maybe even 19 or 20. And so I remember there was one year that I stood up for my mom. I was upset with him. My sisters kind of went along with the fact that he sent a $100 check to the house a week after he left that said child support at the bottom, and then wanted to take us out for ice cream. And I was like, no. And the only thing I said on the phone with him, my sisters held the phone up to my ear because I didn't want to talk to him, because I wouldn't go have ice cream with them. And he was screaming at me, screaming, how dare you disrespect me? You're not going to come. I can't believe you. You're not my son. And I was like, I'm the man of the house. I literally said to him, and I still can't believe I said this, but I said, we don't need you anymore. And by we, I meant my mom and I. I was trying to protect my mom. And I said, we don't need you anymore. I'm the man of the house. And so I think that moment shattered my relationship with my father. What little relationship I had with him. We had a good relationship. We just didn't have, like I said, a communicative one. So I don't want to make it sound like I had a bad relationship with him. My parents are Middle Eastern, and they didn't believe in therapy and communication. And so that's where we didn't have a great relationship. But that moment right there, when I told him I was the man of the house from that minute on, was what shattered our relationship. And so when he moved back into the house, it was very awkward. And so at the age of 16, I moved out. I moved in with a girlfriend of mine that I had known since 7th grade. And I moved in with her and her parents. She then went to Spain to go abroad for high school, which is when her father came down on me hard because he didn't believe that I was gay. And he basically kicked me out of the house. So here I am with nowhere to go.
Was your mother understanding that this was going on as well? I mean, did she?
I didn't.
You didn't communicate with her either?
I didn't communicate with anybody, Dan. I was, and still am the type of person that like it's my problem. I have to fix it, and it's nobody else's to take on. I left the house, so I needed to pick up my own 2 feet. And when my best friend's parents kicked me out of the house, the only place I could turn to was my Aunt Annie's house, because she had moved here a few years prior. And she basically just said, she's like, listen, I know you don't talk about it, but I know you're gay. We all know you're gay. It's fine. If you want to come and live with me, you can live a gay life. I'll even help you call your friend that you no longer talk to. My best friend who I didn't talk to anymore. His name was Brad. I'll help you find him. I'll help you call him and talk to him. I'll even drive you to him, because at the time I wasn't driving. I'll drive you to him, and you can ask him about when he knew you were gay, so you can find out about your history. And I mean, she pulled every rabbit out of her hat. You can be yourself.
Master manipulator. Mentally ill master manipulator. This is incredible. It's hard to sometimes even believe this happened to you. It is so wrong.
Yeah. So I moved in. I moved in with my aunt and my uncle. And everything, I think it was like not even 4 days in, we did everything she said. We called my best friend Brad. I got a hold of him. She was like listening to the conversation like a hawk. And it was almost like the minute I hung up that phone, she realized like, yeah, this kid is definitely gay. And that's not okay. And that's not going to happen. And she had, a monopoly on my life. I wasn't talking.
So what she told you, it's all right to be gay, was a lie in itself, because it wasn't right for her, because she wanted to do more damage to you.
So that's when she tried. I knew it was not right and wrong, but she tried convincing me, I know that you're gay, and I know that you're curious, and, I'm your aunt. And in God's eyes, if we do something sexual, it's not wrong, especially because I'm teaching you and I'm helping you wake up to the fact that you're not gay. So,
oh God,
we can do whatever we want to prove to yourself that you're not gay. I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was like, hell no, I want you nowhere near me. That was not the plan. No, but what do I do? Where do I go? So, long story short, at the age of, it was 17, she would come into my room at night, and I would be kind of like in a daze when she would come into my room. And I didn't want my uncle to wake up, because I knew how that would go. They would fight, nothing would happen, and she would get worse with me the next day.
And I want to make a comment here too, because we found out she was drugging with Benadryl. She had drugged a number of you with Benadryl, and probably even her own husband.
Yeah.
So not only was she a master manipulator, but she was using drugs to get what she wanted. And I wanted just to make that clear, because that gives some understanding of why you felt maybe a little stoned out or completely zoned out, is because Benadryl was involved in that.
Yeah, Annie was notorious for always having, we would call it her syrup. She would drink the Nestea. She would put like 5 scoops of Nestea in a little cup. And we just thought it was because she was a sugaraholic. It turns out she was drugging everybody that she wanted to do things to with Benadryl. And so she would come into my room at night, and I just gave in to her, Dan. I would just let her.
I know this is hard to be. I know it's hard.
It was easier to let her do what she wanted to do than suffer the physical consequences after. But on December 17th, I was 17 years old. And that was the night it went from fondling to penetration. And I remember waking up the next morning, and I told her that I told her I didn't like what happened. And I never spoke with Annie. It was very rare that we would talk about like emotions. But that next morning, I remember I told her, I said, I don't feel good about what happened. I don't like this. I don't want to continue. I literally told her I don't want to live anymore. And I got a phone call from I think it was my sister. And she said, Sarah, it was my one sister, or was one of my family members. Somebody told me that my sister, Sarah, my middle sister, got into an accident the night before, and she was in the hospital, and the car was like totaled. And it was rare for me to get a phone call from family and friends, because at this point Annie didn't allow me to talk to anybody. So for me to get a phone call from a family member, I was like, whoa, what's going on? And so I hung up the phone and I cried. And I said, see, this is God punishing me for what I allowed to happen last night. My sister almost died. And it was like at the same time as what was happening last night. No, it's fine. It's fine. You're just being exaggerative. It's fine. And she was like so nonchalant, as if nothing had happened the night before. And once again, that became the new norm. She would come into my room at night and we would have intercourse. And from what my sisters tell me, because they had looked at histories, Annie never had technology. She hated cell phones and computers. So whenever she would use a computer, it would be at a family member's house. And I remember one of my sisters approaching me and being like, I know that something is going on. You won't tell us. Mom is taking you to therapy. You won't even tell the therapist. Something is not right, and we all know it. And I just want you to know the last search that Annie did on my computer was menstrual cycle and how to get pregnant. Mind you, her husband had been begging her for a baby forever, and Annie's response was, my body is a temple. I'm never going to ruin it for you. I'm never going to have a baby. Well, Annie waited until I was 18 to get pregnant. And by 19, Dante was born. By 21, I realized that we were both in danger, not only from her sexual abuse, but her physical abuse. And that I wasn't going to be able to protect my son and get him out of the situation unless I got out of it myself first. And ironically enough, my son is probably the reason why I am able to talk to you today, because I recognized at that point that I was the only one that was going to be able to protect him. And if I left this earth, he was done for. So I was able to get away at 21. It took me about 1.5 years after he was born. And about a year later, I started court proceedings because CPS didn't help, police department didn't help, nobody helped. And the only thing that would help was hiring an attorney. So that's how Dante was born, and the crazy life that he was born into.
Now let's talk about the support. You didn't have support from your family back then. Maybe your sisters tried. Maybe your cousin tried. What is really even more damaging than what happened, not more damaging, but how much more damage Annie did, was you found out that she had molested your sister and molested your cousin.
Yeah.
That is, this woman should be in prison. And she's not. Now, does your family come to realize, do they know your story, your mom and dad? Do they know your story now? I think you mentioned your dad read it in a court proceedings. Is that true?
I have yet to speak with my parents about my story. My mom has told me she's read what the courts asked me to provide to them, which was basically a synopsis of how the grooming process took place between Annie and myself. I don't know if my father's read it. I've never spoken to my father about it. But yeah, they know that my son is Annie's son, but do they know how or what? I don't think so.
To show you how
I really told anybody details of what happened to me until I met my now fiance, Cameron. I never felt safe enough.
You know, I have to give you a tremendous amount of appreciation for the courage you took to come on my podcast and allow people throughout the world to understand, because you have a voice here. You have a voice. And what's even more troubling is that you found out later that your son had been abused by Annie. And that, to me, is beyond horrible. It's inhuman. And it's incredible that you took the courage to tell this story. I know you were nervous, but you took the courage to do it. You're an incredible man of courage. You've been through more abuse than any person should have ever been through. Not having family that supported you. Also realizing that your sister and cousin and now your son was abused by her. And they don't have much communication with her. Some of the family does, but your parents realize there's no communication with her. Is that correct, Travit?
Yeah, essentially it split our family, and we have a very large family. And it split us in half. I would say more so like a third and 2/3. And a third of the family speaks ish with me. The other 2/3 speak with Annie as if nothing has happened.
Wow. Where are you at with your life today? Where are you at life today? Do you have peace and joy in your life today? And how were you able to get that peace and joy in your life?
You know, it's a work in progress every day, Dan.
As it is for me and many others, are always a work in progress.
You know, I finally I'm with a partner that makes me feel safe, and the thing that I would have considered my deepest, darkest, I can talk about. But the things that are my deepest, darkest are just things that haunt me from my past.
Mm-hmm.
I react in certain ways to people and things, and in a way that somebody without a past like mine wouldn't react. And so, yeah, that's why I say it's a work in progress. I hate to say it, but I'm constantly, when I meet somebody, I'm looking for red flags from the minute I meet people. And I don't want to get into detail about what, because it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost try and categorize everybody as bad or good. And that helps my brain simplify whether I continue to communicate with this person or I just drop them like a bad penny and move on, because bad people are Annie and good people are Cameron, and there's no in between. And I'm working on that.
Mm-hmm.
I see her almost every week. She's been amazing for me. I'm finally working on myself. But it's things like that, Dan, that I feel like I wouldn't have to. It wouldn't be an internal battle every day, every time I shook somebody's hand, had I not had a past like the one that I had. I am constantly looking at nonverbals from everybody. And that will absolutely derail my path of conversation if I feel like an eye twitch happened or a huff was too loud and, oh, I'm annoying somebody, and, oh, they're pissed, shut down, move away, get out. Like, it's a struggle every day. Every day.
Well, Annie damaged you. She damaged you severely. And this should not have happened to you or anyone. This should never have happened, but it did. And you've shown fortitude, you've shown strength, you've shown courage, you've had fear, and you've used courage to overcome it. This has been such an outstanding story that is going to help a lot of people. It has helped me because, as I said, I had a situation in my own family that happened. And I know, I feel you. I feel what you're saying. And I just can't thank you enough for spending some time and give my listeners a story inside you, deep inside you. And I commend you so much for volunteering to be on my podcast. You are a tremendous man. And I know we all have troubles and we all have struggles, but you're not running from your fear. You're embracing the fear. You're getting therapy and you're moving forward. And I just tell you how much I'm so proud of you for sharing your story on my podcast, David. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. It's been gut-wrenching to have you tell your story, but on the other side, it will be inspiring and it will give other individuals, I think particularly parents and aunts and uncles that see stuff going on, don't avoid it. When you see these things on, don't avoid it. Do something about it. These are children. Have a voice for them because they don't have a voice. And when they do have a voice, don't shut them down. I just think that is powerful, that they need to hear that. And I thank you so much for sharing that on the podcast. My thoughts and prayers will always be with you, David, and thank you for sharing this.
Thank you very much, Dan. I really appreciate you taking the time.
You take care. Bye-bye now.